The old man walked slowly through the crowded streets, his worn-out shoes making soft thuds on the dusty road. His clothes were torn, faded, and patched in several places, and his face was lined with wrinkles that spoke of years of struggle and hardship. People hurried past him, some ignoring him completely, some throwing him curious or disgusted glances. He carried a small, tattered bag, and his eyes, sharp and observant, looked carefully at every person he passed. There was something about him that seemed out of place, a quiet dignity hidden beneath the appearance of poverty. He had chosen this part of the city because it was busy, full of life and movement. Shops lined the streets, vendors shouted to attract customers, and children ran past him, laughing and playing. He blended into the crowd as much as he could, but his presence was still noticed. A few people tossed coins his way, more out of pity than kindness, but he barely acknowledged them. He had no need for their charity. He had a purpose far greater than seeking help for himself. He stopped near a small fruit stall, pretending to look at the apples. The stall owner barely glanced at him, busy with other customers. He watched quietly as the owner helped a young woman pick out fresh fruit, offering her a discount without being asked. A small smile appeared on the old man's face. He made a mental note. Acts of kindness were rare, and those who practiced them even rarer. This was the world he wanted to observe. The world where true hearts could be found among the chaos of human life. A group of young men passed by, laughing loudly, not noticing the old man at all. One of them nudged another and whispered something about giving money to a beggar, but they kept walking. They did not stop to consider him, to acknowledge him as a human being. The old man's gaze followed them, noting their indifference. He knew that wealth and power often blinded people to the realities of life, and that many judged others solely on appearances. As he moved further down the street, he came across a young girl struggling to carry a heavy basket of vegetables. People passed her by, too busy with their own concerns to notice. Without hesitation, he approached her and offered a hand. "Let me help you with that," he said softly. The girl looked up, startled at first, then nodded gratefully. Together, they carried the basket to her small home, and he watched as her family thanked him warmly. He smiled, satisfied. Here was someone who appreciated kindness, someone who could see beyond appearances. After leaving the girl's home, he wandered into a quieter part of the city. The streets were narrower, the houses older, and the people more wary. He noticed an elderly woman sitting outside her home, struggling to mend a torn piece of cloth. He knelt beside her, offering a few gentle words of encouragement and helping her with the task. She looked at him with surprise, clearly expecting rudeness or indifference from someone who appeared so poor. Instead, she found patience and care. The old man's heart warmed as he witnessed her relief and gratitude. These small moments, simple gestures of humanity, were the things he had come to see. People often treated him with suspicion, some even with anger. A shopkeeper shouted at him to move along, calling him lazy and useless. The old man did not argue. He simply bowed his head and walked away. He understood the fear and mistrust that poverty created. People were quick to judge, slow to understand. It was not their fault entirely. The world had taught them harsh lessons about survival and self-interest. But he was searching for something more, something rare and precious kindness that was genuine. Hearts that were true. He stopped near a small park, where children played under the watchful eyes of their parents. He sat on a worn bench, observing quietly. A little boy dropped his toy, and a young man passing by picked it up and returned it with a smile. The old man noted this too. Even small actions mattered. He was learning, collecting details, understanding who showed compassion naturally and who acted out of obligation or fear. Time passed, and the streets grew busier, with evening shoppers and families returning home. The old man wandered through markets, alleys, and squares, always careful to remain unnoticed while paying attention to everything around him. He saw arguments over prices, people helping strangers carry heavy loads, children sharing food, and neighbors offering comfort to the sick. Each moment, each action, told a story about human nature. As night approached, he found a quiet corner near a small tea shop. The warm glow from inside illuminated his tired face. He ordered a simple cup of tea, sitting silently as he watched people pass by. A young woman offered her seat to an elderly man, and a couple helped a lost child find her parents. These acts were small, almost invisible in the rush of life, but to the old man, they were signals. They were proof that humanity still had hearts capable of true empathy. He sipped his tea slowly, thinking about his son. His son had everything in terms of wealth and comfort, but had been hurt by people who loved him for the wrong reasons. The old man had taken on this disguise, this life of hardship, to find those rare individuals who were genuine, who valued kindness above everything else. He believed that by observing the world through this humble guise, he could identify people whose hearts were pure enough to influence his son's life positively. The night grew darker, and the streets emptied gradually. The old man stood up, stretching his weary limbs. He had learned much today, seen acts of generosity and selfishness alike, and noted everything carefully. Tomorrow he would continue, moving through different neighborhoods, meeting different people, testing the world quietly, observing who acted with compassion and who ignored the suffering around them. As he walked back to his modest temporary shelter, he thought about the lessons of the day. Life was unpredictable, often harsh, but there were still sparks of goodness that shone brightly. He had to find those sparks, nurture them, and guide them toward his son. It was not about money, power, or influence. It was about heart, integrity, and the ability to love without expecting anything in return. That was the treasure he sought. He lay down on the simple mat, the sounds of the city slowly fading. His mind replayed every moment, every encounter, every smile and frown he had witnessed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to witness humanity in its rawest form. He closed his eyes, ready to continue the journey, understanding that the path he had chosen was difficult, but necessary. It was a path of patience, observation, and hope. One that would eventually reveal the people who truly deserved to touch his son's life. His son lived in a large house in the city, a home filled with luxury, comfort, and every convenience money could buy. Yet despite all the wealth around him, his heart was restless. He had faced disappointment and betrayal from people who pretended to care for him, but were only interested in his money and status. Friends had turned opportunistic, and even those who seemed kind at first had ulterior motives. Over time, he had grown cautious and reserved, refusing to trust anyone fully. He lived carefully, choosing solitude over shallow companionship. Always wary of deceit, the father watched from afar, observing his son's life with quiet concern. He remembered the young man's bright, trusting eyes from childhood and the kind-hearted nature he had once possessed. He could see now that those qualities were slowly dimming, replaced by suspicion and guardedness. It pained the father to witness his son retreat behind walls built not of brick, but of hurt and fear. He knew that wealth could bring comfort, but not true happiness. The real treasure was love, honesty, and loyalty, things that could not be bought. The son's daily life was structured and predictable. He spent his mornings in business meetings, his afternoons reviewing company matters, and his evenings often alone or with people he barely knew. He kept his interactions polite but distant, careful not to let anyone get too close. He enjoyed the trappings of wealth, but never allowed himself to rely on people for emotional support. Over time, he had learned to see past flattery and pretension. Yet he longed silently for genuine connection, for someone who would care for him as a person, not for what he possessed. The father reflected on all this as he sat in his humble shelter at night. Recalling moments when his son had been hurt, he remembered the day his son had trusted a friend with business advice, only to have the information leaked and misused. He remembered the young woman who had seemed to love him, only to vanish when he refused to buy her the lifestyle she demanded. Each incident left invisible scars, shaping his son's reluctance too. Open his heart, the father realized that finding someone who could reach his son required more than introductions or arranged meetings. It required discovering a person with genuine kindness, patience, and resilience. Someone whose actions were guided by their heart, not by material desire. That realization had led him to take on the disguise of the beggar, wandering the streets to witness humanity at its rawest and truest. He needed to see people in their natural state, free from pretense, to find the one who could change his son's life for the better. Meanwhile, his son often wandered the city alone, finding solace in quiet parks or small cafes where no one knew him. He observed people like an outsider, studying their behavior and searching for authenticity in a world where appearances often deceived. Sometimes he would help a stranger quietly, without recognition, hoping to hold on to the values his father had instilled in him. Yet he still struggled to trust, wary of the world's harshness. One evening, son took a walk along a narrow, dimly lit street. He noticed a beggar sitting by a wall, shivering in the cold. Something about the old man's calm presence caught his attention. Unlike others, the beggar did not beg aggressively or complain loudly. He simply existed, quietly observing the world around him. The son paused, watching him for a moment before moving along. He could not have known that this seemingly ordinary figure would soon play a pivotal role in his life. At the same time, the father, still disguised, observed his son from a distance, noting the subtle gestures of compassion he still displayed. Even in his reserved state, the son occasionally paused to help someone in need, offered a kind word to a stranger, or made a small gesture that reflected his underlying goodness. The father felt a mix of pride and sorrow. Pride for the core of kindness that remained in his son. Sorrow for the pain and caution life had forced upon him. The father's days were now split between observing the city's people and keeping track of his son's interactions. Every encounter, every small act of kindness was a clue. Every act of selfishness or cruelty was noted too. He had to ensure that the people his son might meet were those whose hearts were pure. It was not wealth, social status, or charm that mattered, but honesty, empathy, and resilience in the face of adversity. One afternoon, the father saw his son helping a street vendor untangle a basket of fallen goods, refusing payment or recognition. The father's heart swelled quietly. This was the son he remembered, still capable of genuine care. These small moments reassured him that his mission was not in vain. He knew that if he could guide the right person to his son, they could rebuild trust and bring joy back into his life. That night, the father walked back to his temporary shelter, reflecting on the patterns he had noticed. He had seen many people over the past few weeks, some cruel, some indifferent, some compassionate. The ones who acted without expectation of reward, who offered help silently, who treated others with dignity despite the world's hardships. These were the people who could influence his son positively. He had to find them, assess their character carefully, and prepare for the moment when he could connect them to his son. The father also knew the importance of patience. His son's wounds were deep, and trust could not be forced. The process required time, observation, and careful selection. One wrong step could reinforce his son's skepticism, pushing him further away from the possibility of genuine connection. The father accepted the challenge, knowing that the effort would be worth it if it meant his son could once again experience love and friendship untainted by greed or selfishness. As the night settled over the city, the father lay on his mat, thinking about the future. He imagined the day when his son would meet someone truly deserving of his heart, someone whose kindness and integrity would shine even in the darkest moments. He visualized the joy, the healing, and the transformation that could occur when genuine love met genuine character. The thought filled him with hope and renewed determination. Tomorrow would bring new encounters, new lessons, and perhaps new clues about the people who could be trusted. The father was ready to continue his silent observation, blending into the shadows of the city while searching for hearts that were pure and true. Every step, every interaction, every small act of kindness he witnessed would bring him closer to his goal, ensuring that his son's life would be filled not just with wealth, but with the love and trust that money could never buy. Days turned into weeks, and the old man continued his careful observation of the city and its people. He walked the streets each morning, blending into the crowd, as if he were just another face in the city's chaos. His disguise was complete tattered clothes, dusty shoes, and a humble demeanor that drew little attention. Yet beneath this simple appearance, his mind was sharp, recording every act of kindness, cruelty, and indifference. Each interaction was a lesson, each gesture a clue. He knew that only through patient observation could he find the person who would influence his son's life in the right way. One morning, he entered a small marketplace where the smell of fresh bread and spices filled the air. A woman was struggling with a heavy cart of vegetables, clearly exhausted. People passed by without noticing, too busy with their own errands. The old man approached silently and offered a hand. "Let me help you," he said. She hesitated, looking at his worn appearance, but then nodded, grateful for the assistance. Together, they moved the cart to her shop. She thanked him warmly, offering a small loaf of bread in return, but he refused it politely. He did not help her for reward. He helped to observe how genuine kindness could emerge even in the simplest circumstances. Later that day, he witnessed a group of young men bullying a street vendor, attempting to take his small earnings. The vendor tried to defend himself, but he was overpowered. The old man stepped forward cautiously, speaking firmly and demanding that they leave the man alone. The young men laughed at him at first, mocking his shabby appearance, but his tone and presence carried a quiet authority. They eventually walked away, leaving the vendor grateful. The old man noted the fear, courage, and reactions carefully, recognizing how some people, even in the face of weakness, could show strength and integrity. Meanwhile, his son went about his day at home, yet his thoughts were restless. He had begun noticing certain patterns in the people he encountered, small acts of kindness that often went unrecognized. He wondered why some people acted without expectation, why others seemed blind to suffering. This curiosity was one reason he wandered into the city streets occasionally, away from his luxurious surroundings. He wanted to see the world as it really was, not filtered by wealth or privilege. One afternoon, the son visited a small park, where children played and elderly people gathered to rest. He saw a little girl trip over a stone, scraping her knee. Without hesitation, he ran to her side, offering a hand and helping her to her feet. He cleaned the wound with a handkerchief he always carried. The girl's mother, nearby, smiled gratefully, and the son felt a small warmth inside, a fleeting connection to the world beyond his guarded walls. He did not know it, but the old man watched this moment from a distance, noting the son's natural empathy, the way his heart responded even when he tried to hide it. The old man's days were long and tiring. He walked through narrow alleys, quiet neighborhoods, and busy marketplaces, always observing. He noticed a woman offering her seat on a crowded bus to an elderly man, a child sharing a small snack with a stray dog, a vendor returning extra change to a customer without being asked. Every act mattered, and he kept a mental record of each one, assessing the people's motives and intentions. He had to be meticulous. The wrong judgment could affect his son's future happiness. One evening, he came across a small tea shop where a group of men were arguing loudly over a minor disagreement. Some were shouting insults while others tried to mediate. The old man sat at a corner table, sipping his tea quietly, watching how the situation unfolded. He noticed a young woman calmly step in, speaking with patience and reason, diffusing the tension without anger or condescension. Her actions were subtle but effective. She did not seek attention or recognition. She simply acted from a place of understanding and empathy. The old man's heart recognized something rare in her character. Over the next few days, he observed her further. He saw her helping neighbors carry groceries, comforting a crying child, and assisting an elderly man who had dropped his wallet. She did all these things naturally, without seeking reward or praise. The old man felt a quiet hope rising within him. Could she be the person whose kindness and integrity would influence his son? He knew he had to be patient and continue observing, to ensure her actions were consistent and genuine. Meanwhile, the son's curiosity about the world outside his home grew. He began noticing small details in people's behavior that he had previously ignored. He realized that some of the simplest acts of kindness were often the most meaningful. He started engaging with strangers more often, offering help when he could, and observing how people responded. Though he remained cautious, a subtle shift was happening in his heart. He was beginning to see that not everyone was motivated by selfish gain. One day, the son encountered the woman the old man had been observing. She was helping a street vendor organize his goods, ensuring no customer was treated unfairly. The son paused, watching her quietly, impressed by her patience and care. She noticed him standing there, but she did not act differently. Her kindness was consistent, unpretentious. The old man, watching from a distance, felt a surge of hope. This could be the person whose heart aligned with the values he wanted to instill in his son's life. The following weeks involved careful planning and more observation. The father continued his disguise as a beggar, engaging with various people, testing their reactions to small challenges, observing their choices when faced with moral dilemmas. The son, unaware of the old man's presence nearby, continued his cautious exploration of humanity, slowly noticing the woman's consistent acts of kindness. The old man knew that building a connection between them required patience. Trust and understanding could not be forced. They had to grow naturally. At night, the father reflected on his observations, analyzing patterns in behavior and character. He recorded details in his mind, recalling every smile, gesture, and interaction. He understood the importance of emotional intelligence and genuine empathy. It was not wealth, power, or influence that defined a person's worth, but the choices they made when no one was watching. The old man believed that these hidden qualities would ultimately guide his son toward a meaningful connection. The son began spending more time in the areas where he had seen genuine kindness. He quietly helped people, observed interactions, and gradually felt a subtle shift in his own heart. He was learning to trust, to hope, and to appreciate the value of integrity in human relationships. The old man watched this transformation with quiet pride. His efforts were slowly taking shape, and the right people were beginning to appear naturally in his son's life. As part 3 came to a close, the old man remained committed to his mission. Each day brought new insights, new challenges, and new opportunities to witness the true nature of humanity. He understood that finding the right person for his son required more than observation. It required patience, discernment, and the ability to recognize genuine character. With hope in his heart and determination in his mind, he continued his journey, confident that the seeds he was planting would one day grow into trust, love, and happiness for his son. The days passed, and the old man's mission continued with steady determination. He wandered through streets, marketplaces, parks, and neighborhoods, always observing, always learning. Every person he encountered was a puzzle piece, every small action a clue to the nature of their heart. He had begun to notice patterns, those who offered help without expecting anything in return, those who acted kindly even when it was inconvenient, and those who turned away in indifference or cruelty. He knew that only the first group could be trusted to influence his son in a positive way. One morning, he saw a woman carrying a bundle of firewood, struggling up a narrow staircase in an old neighborhood. Many people passed by without noticing, too busy with their own lives. The old man walked beside her, offering silent support. She thanked him with a small nod, and they continued together until she reached her modest home. There, she shared a warm smile with her elderly parents and offered the old man some tea. He accepted graciously, enjoying the simple warmth of hospitality. This was exactly the kind of humility and generosity he sought in people actions without expectation. Kindness without reward. Meanwhile, his son had been paying more attention to the people around him. The man in the tea shop, the woman helping the vendor, and the countless small acts of human decency he had witnessed began to leave a mark on his heart. He felt a subtle shift, a gentle reminder that not all people were self-interested or opportunistic. Even in a world often filled with greed, there were souls that shone with authenticity, kindness, and strength. One afternoon, the father, still in disguise, observed the woman who had been consistently showing compassion in the marketplace. She was helping an elderly man pick up groceries he had dropped and then paused to comfort a child who had fallen nearby. Her attention to others seemed natural, effortless, and sincere. The father's heart swelled with hope. He knew that this person had the qualities that could touch his son's heart and slowly restore the trust he had lost. He realized that bringing them together required careful planning and patience. The old man followed her discreetly, Watching her interactions with neighbors, friends, and strangers alike, he observed the way she treated people equally, whether rich or poor, young or old. She never sought recognition or reward. Her actions were guided purely by empathy and compassion. The old man smiled quietly to himself, knowing that these rare qualities would resonate with his son, who had once valued authenticity above all else, but had been burned by dishonesty and greed. Meanwhile, his son, unaware of the old man's presence nearby, continued to explore the streets with a growing sense of curiosity and cautious optimism. He began noticing the small acts of kindness that went unnoticed by most. The way a vendor offered extra food to someone who could not pay. The way a passerby helped an elderly woman cross the street. And the way a stranger offered a comforting word to someone. In distress, all of these acts sparked a sense of hope and wonder in his heart. He began to see that trust and compassion still existed in the world. Even if hidden beneath layers of indifference or pretense, the old man realized that his next step was critical. It was not enough to simply observe. He needed to create moments where the son and the woman could cross paths naturally. He began devising situations that would allow their lives to intersect in ways that felt organic and unforced. Every step had to be subtle, every interaction carefully guided to ensure authenticity. He did not want to manipulate feelings, but rather create opportunities for genuine connection. One day, the son visited a small street where children often played, and vendors sold their goods. He noticed the woman helping a street vendor organize his goods, ensuring fairness and kindness in every interaction. The son paused, watching her quietly, impressed by her patience, empathy, and humility. He observed the way she treated everyone with respect, regardless of their background or social status. Her actions spoke louder than words ever could. The old man, hidden nearby, felt a quiet satisfaction. The son's attention was drawn to her naturally, a sign that their paths were beginning to align. Over the following days, the old man continued to observe both his son and the woman, noting their reactions, interactions, and choices. The son began to notice her more frequently, each encounter leaving a subtle impact. He appreciated her kindness, her patience, and her genuine concern for others. These qualities were rare and refreshing, a stark contrast to the superficiality and selfishness he had often encountered. He felt drawn to her, not for her appearance or social standing, but for the authenticity of her heart. The father, in his humble disguise, watched quietly. Knowing that the moment for revelation was approaching, he had created opportunities for them to observe each other, to appreciate each other's character, and to recognize the genuine nature of their hearts. The process required patience, careful planning, and unwavering attention. He understood that rushing the connection could spoil the delicate balance of trust. An understanding that was forming. One evening, the father observed a small act of compassion that encapsulated everything he sought. The woman noticed a young boy struggling to carry a small load of books to a nearby school. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, offering her help and ensuring the boy reached his destination safely. The son witnessed this act from a distance, feeling a deep sense of admiration and respect. The old man's heart swelled with pride and hope. This was the kind of person whose values aligned perfectly with the ones he wanted to see in his son's life. The father spent the next few weeks subtly guiding small encounters, allowing the son and the woman to see each other naturally. Each moment, each interaction, was an opportunity for recognition, understanding, and mutual respect. He continued his observations with meticulous care, noting the growth of trust and interest in both of them. He knew that the woman's consistent kindness and the son's capacity for empathy would create a bond that was authentic and enduring. At night, as he rested on his modest mat, the father reflected on the progress made. He had seen the transformation in his son, the subtle shifts in perception and openness, and he had witnessed the unwavering integrity and compassion of the woman. He understood that the pieces were falling into place, that the groundwork had been laid for a meaningful connection. It was not about wealth, status, or influence. It was about heart, character, and the quiet, unassuming power of kindness. The old man knew that the moment of revelation was drawing near. Soon, He would no longer need to remain in disguise, and the truth of his identity would come to light. But until then, he continued his careful observation, guiding without interfering, allowing the natural course of events to unfold. He understood that genuine connections could not be forced. They had to grow organically, nurtured by patience, respect, and understanding. As Part 4 drew to a close, the old man remained steadfast in his mission. He had found the rare individual whose heart shone with authenticity, and he had observed the subtle awakening of trust and admiration in his son. The next step would bring the revelation, the meeting, and the possibility of a life-changing connection. With hope in his heart and unwavering determination, he continued his journey, confident that the careful planning, patience, and observation would soon culminate in the happiness and fulfillment of his son's life. The day had finally arrived when the old man knew that the time for revelation was near. For weeks he had observed, guided, and created subtle moments for his son and the woman to encounter one another naturally. He had seen their hearts respond to each other, admiration and respect growing quietly but steadily. The son had noticed the woman's unwavering kindness, patience, and integrity, while she had observed the genuine empathy and humility in his actions. The father knew that the connection they were forming was authentic, built on mutual recognition of character rather than appearances or status. Early in the morning, the old man prepared himself for the moment when he would no longer need the disguise that had served him so well. He walked through the streets, reflecting on the journey, the experiences, the observations, the countless small acts of human kindness he had witnessed. They all led to this point. He had seen the worst and the best of people, and through this careful study, he had found the one who truly deserved a place in his son's life. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the mission that had begun in disguise was now ready to reach its natural conclusion. Meanwhile, the son walked through a familiar part of the city. Drawn by the instinct to seek out humanity in its purest form, he was still cautious, still wary of deception, but he felt a sense of anticipation he could not explain. Something in the way people carried themselves, the subtle interactions he observed, had begun to restore his hope. He noticed the woman ahead, helping a street vendor who had dropped a basket of goods. She moved with grace, offering assistance without hesitation, her attention entirely on the needs of others. The son's heart responded instinctively, a mix of admiration and quiet curiosity. The old man, observing from a short distance, smiled to himself. He had arranged this encounter carefully, but it appeared completely natural. He saw the son pause, watching the woman, taking in her actions and the genuine care she displayed. He knew that his son's heart was opening. The trust he had lost was beginning to return, nurtured by the woman's authenticity and compassion. The father felt a deep sense of pride, not for himself, but for the two people whose lives were about to intertwine in a meaningful way. The woman noticed the son observing, but did not alter her actions. She continued assisting the vendor, speaking kindly to him, and making sure every detail was handled. Her focus remained on the immediate need, her actions guided by empathy rather than self-interest. The son approached cautiously, offering a polite word of acknowledgement. Their eyes met, and in that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. Both recognized sincerity in each other, a rare and precious quality that transcended words. The old man approached slowly, no longer needing to hide. The moment of truth had arrived. He removed his tattered cloak, revealing the dignified presence beneath. The son and the woman looked at him in surprise, recognition dawning. "Father," the son whispered, astonished at the transformation. The woman, equally stunned, observed the change. Realizing that the man who had quietly guided these moments was no ordinary figure, the old man spoke softly, explaining the purpose of his disguise and the reason behind the careful observation. He recounted the journey, the lessons learned, the acts of kindness witnessed, and the careful attention to character rather than wealth or appearance. He explained that his intention had been to find someone whose heart was true, someone whose values aligned with those he hoped to see in his son's life. The son listened, emotions swelling within him, gratitude, understanding. In a renewed sense of hope, the woman absorbed every word, Recognizing the depth of planning and intention behind the old man's actions, she realized that her kindness, patience, and integrity had been noticed not by chance, but by someone who valued those qualities above all else. She felt a mix of humility and pride, understanding that her natural disposition had led her to this moment, where her actions had created an authentic connection with someone whose heart matched her own. The son, moved by the revelation, approached the woman carefully. He spoke of the admiration he had felt, of the respect that had grown silently as he observed her actions. He expressed gratitude for her authenticity, the way she had interacted with the world without expectation, and for the quiet strength she'd displayed. The woman responded with warmth, acknowledging the subtle ways she had noticed his empathy and care for others. In that exchange, a bond was formed, grounded in recognition of true character. Mutual respect and understanding, the old man watched, a sense of fulfillment washing over him. The mission that had begun with careful observation and subtle guidance had reached its intended goal. His son had found someone whose heart was genuine, whose values aligned with the principles he hoped to see nurtured in his life. The connection was authentic, unforced, and rooted in admiration for character rather than wealth or appearance. It was a moment of triumph, not for material success, but for the enduring values of empathy, kindness, and integrity. As days passed, the relationship between the son and the woman continued to grow naturally. They spent time together, learning about each other's experiences, sharing perspectives, and building trust. Their connection deepened through small acts of care, thoughtful conversations, and mutual respect. The old man observed from a respectful distance, witnessing the gradual blossoming of a relationship grounded in authenticity. He understood that happiness derived from such connections was far more enduring than any material wealth. The city, once a backdrop of observation and testing, now became a canvas for their shared experiences. Together, they visited markets, parks, and neighborhoods, engaging with the world around them in meaningful ways. They offered help where needed, spoke kindly to strangers, and continued to practice the values that had first drawn them together. Their actions inspired others quietly, demonstrating that compassion, integrity, and empathy were qualities to be cherished and nurtured. The old man reflected on the journey as he sat quietly one evening. The disguise, the careful planning, the observation of countless acts of kindness and cruelty, it had all led to this moment of fulfillment. His son's heart had opened, trust had been restored, and a genuine connection had been established. He felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that the careful efforts had borne fruit, and that his son's life would now be enriched by a bond built on character, not convenience. The story concluded not with grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but with the quiet, enduring presence of authenticity and love. The son and the woman continued to grow together, their relationship strengthened by the trials, observations, and lessons that had brought them together. The old man, satisfied with the outcome, understood that the mission of guiding hearts had been accomplished. True happiness had been found, not through wealth or power, but through genuine human connection, empathy, and the quiet strength of kindness. It was a story of patience, observation, and hope, proving that the heart's true desires could be realized when guided by integrity and compassion. Even after the revelation, life did not immediately become effortless for the son and the woman. Their bond, though strong and genuine, faced the subtle challenges of understanding, patience, and adapting to each other's world. The old man, now free from his disguise, continued to guide them silently, offering wisdom and advice only when necessary. He had seen how easily hearts could be tested and wanted to ensure that the foundation of their connection remained strong and unshaken. The son began opening up about his past experiences, the betrayals he had faced, and the cautiousness that had shaped his interactions with people. The woman listened attentively, her empathy allowing him to express feelings he had long kept buried. She offered neither judgment nor pity, only understanding and gentle reassurance. This act of quiet support strengthened the bond between them, proving that the foundation of trust could be rebuilt even after years of skepticism. The old man watched from a short distance as they navigated these new stages of connection. He noticed the little disagreements that arose, the moments of misunderstanding, and the subtle anxieties that occasionally surfaced. But he also observed their willingness to communicate, to compromise, and to prioritize understanding over ego. Each instance reinforced the potential of their relationship to endure, proving that genuine character could withstand challenges without being shaken. Meanwhile, their interactions with the community around them continued to reflect the values they shared. They visited markets, assisted neighbors, and took part in community efforts, spreading kindness and empathy wherever they went. Their actions inspired those around them, creating ripples of positivity and goodwill. People began to notice the son not just as a wealthy individual, but as a person capable of humility, compassion, and authenticity. The woman, through her consistent acts of care, became a respected figure in her neighborhood, admired for her integrity and genuine concern for others. One day they encountered a young boy who had been struggling to find food for his family. Without hesitation, they stepped in to help, offering not just material assistance, but guidance and encouragement. The boy's gratitude and renewed hope served as a reminder that small, compassionate actions could have lasting impacts. The son and the woman realized that together, they could make a difference beyond their personal lives, extending their values and empathy to others who needed it most. As weeks passed, the son began reflecting on his own life and choices. He recognized the transformation within himself, the shift from guarded skepticism to cautious openness. He had begun to appreciate the depth and importance of emotional intelligence, patience, and empathy in human relationships. The woman, by example, had shown him that true connection depended not on wealth, appearances, or status, but on the willingness to understand, support, and trust one another. The old man observed quietly as they shared quiet evenings together, discussing hopes, fears, and dreams for the future. He noted the subtle growth in their understanding of each other, the patience exercised in moments of tension, and the joy shared in small victories and acts of kindness. He knew that the true test of their relationship was not in the initial revelation, but in the day-to-day interactions that built lasting trust and mutual respect. One evening, the father took them to a quiet park, a place where they could reflect on their journey. He shared stories of his own experiences, the lessons he had learned, and the importance of values that guided his decisions. He emphasized that life was unpredictable, often challenging, but that integrity, kindness, and empathy would provide a compass in moments of uncertainty. Both the son and the woman listened with rapt attention, absorbing the wisdom and recognizing the alignment between their shared values and his teachings. The woman began taking on small initiatives in the community, organizing efforts to assist those in need, from providing food and clothing to offering guidance and emotional support. The son, inspired by her actions, contributed both materially and through hands-on involvement, reinforcing the lesson that wealth held value only when paired with genuine concern for others. Together, they became a force for positive change. Their lives intertwined not just by personal affection, but by shared purpose. The old man continued to monitor their interactions subtly, offering guidance when necessary, but allowing them to navigate challenges independently. He understood that over-intervention could undermine the authenticity of their relationship. By stepping back, he allowed them to make mistakes, learn from them, and strengthen their bond through experience. Each challenge overcome was a testament to their character, resilience, and commitment to each other. In one significant instance, the son and the woman encountered a family facing eviction due to unforeseen financial difficulties. Without hesitation, they provided assistance, negotiating with landlords, offering temporary shelter, and ensuring that the family's dignity remained intact throughout the process. Their actions were careful, thoughtful, and genuine, reflecting the depth of their empathy and reinforcing the lessons they had internalized from their experiences and guidance. The old man watched quietly, proud of the tangible difference they were making. their relationship deepened further. As they continued to support each other in personal growth, the son learned to express vulnerability, sharing fears and hopes without fear of judgment. The woman, in turn, allowed herself to rely on his support and understanding, recognizing that genuine connection required mutual trust and interdependence. Together, they navigated the complexities of emotions, building a foundation of respect, patience, and shared purpose. Over time, their influence extended beyond their immediate surroundings. People began to notice the positive change, the quiet leadership through example, and the unwavering commitment to integrity and kindness. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers sought guidance, inspired by the tangible impact of their actions. The father, observing this evolution, understood that the initial mission had not only brought personal fulfillment to his son, but also created a ripple effect of empathy and goodness in the wider community. As Part 6 drew to a close, the son and the woman had developed a mature, trusting relationship rooted in shared values, compassion, and mutual respect. They faced life's challenges together, their connection strengthened by the experiences and lessons learned along the way. The old man, satisfied with the outcome of his careful observation and subtle guidance, continued to support them quietly, knowing that the foundation of genuine happiness and fulfillment had been successfully established. It was a story not just of revelation and connection, but of enduring growth, empathy, and the transformative power of kindness.